Heyo, for as woke as I am, I really enjoy sexist humor. Like obviously where people playfully roast each other in ways that are clearly exaggerated and absurd, and considering the number of likes those kind of posts get, I know I'm not alone. But because I enjoy that type of humor and that type of humor ends up on my feed, I will sometimes see the most unoriginal, unfunniest people get their ass sucked on for telling a very overused joke. A video about a woman getting into a car crash and someone in the comments goes, "Of course it's a woman." It's a joke and it's so funny because men are statistically worse drivers than women, which is why men pay higher car insurance. It's ironic. Laugh. A video about a lonely man being an ass for no reason. Someone in the comments goes, "Maybe the men should just smile." It's a joke and it's so funny because that's a common annoying phrase usually ironically said to women unprompted. It's ironic. Laugh. I don't find these jokes triggering or offensive or anything, and if you enjoy these jokes without actually being sexist, great. Happy for you. To me, they weren't as annoying at first. I let out a little laugh in my head here and there, but as everyone knows, hearing it over and over and over and over again just makes it funnier. An overused joke still isn't that bad, but the actual problem I have with it is that when people don't laugh, they're assumed to be a part of the problem. If anyone says anything negative about the joke, suddenly they're proving the joke right because whatever gender can't take a joke. If it's not the gender that the commenter is dissing, then suddenly that person is such a pick-me or a white knight, because it's much easier to accuse the other with flaws than to admit that you're just unoriginal and unfunny. Speaking of not taking accountability, one of my male friends asked me what I thought about the common comment, 100 women versus accountability. I personally saw it first as 100 men versus accountability because it was a diss against men coming up with random hypotheticals with men versus animals. That was usually a setup to hurt their feelings if you answered the animal, and then they scream at you why you're wrong and how you should choose the men or else you're an idiot. It was a little funny with men, but I feel like the women one just doesn't make that much sense. But I do think it's a little ridiculous how many women are offended by the phrase 100 women versus accountability, because the original phrase was by women against men first. Don't dish out vague random insults to another gender if you can't handle a couple vague insults to your gender. I mean, unless your rage stems from the Matilda effect, if you as a woman take accountability for your actions, you don't need to be offended at a joke that women made first. Like, there are literally misogynistic fueled murders. Like, our attention needs to be elsewhere than random men who aren't funny on the internet. Other times, whenever I see certain jokes, I find myself questioning if the people laughing along think it's funny because it's just so obviously untrue it becomes satire, or if they truly unironically think like this. Sometimes I will go into comments and realize, oh, people actually think women don't deserve autonomy over their own bodies. That kind of stuff just makes me uncomfortable because it's not really a joke at that point, huh? I don't care about vague jokes that poke fun at whatever gender's ability for resolving conflict, but I personally draw the line at actual dehumanization. I know, controversial opinion, some jokes are just a joke, but others are a reflection of real-world consequences disguised as dark humor. But another type of audience response is virtue signaling, where people put their digital hands on their digital hips and go, "Oh my word, you're such a sexist bigot, this is so offensive." It's this very weird push and pull dynamic between people who take the joke too seriously because they agree with it, and then people who take the joke too seriously because they disagree with it. Like, I came across this video by an artist who posted a bunch of quick sketch portraits of men and captioned it, "Comment if I drew your evil ex. Very Scott Pilgrim against the world type of silly." The comments were mostly just people saying that she did indeed draw their evil exes, or people saying that their exes are women. The only real criticism I saw was from dudes who got their feelings hurt and nobody really cared about them. But later, another one of her videos showed up for me, and it was the exact same format, same art style, same concept, just a new set of portraits featuring women this time. Except when I opened up the comments, people were getting mad at her and calling her sexist and also racist. High-key weird that we're just drawing people who aren't conventionally attractive, in my opinion. Like, why are so many of them chubby, and why do so many of them have acne? It was 2 chubby women and 2 separate ones with acne out of the 8 drawings that she did. And to be completely fair, the drawings were very obviously caricatures, which by definition exaggerate features. Why am I still surprised that the racism app shows eugenics-inspired conflation of morality and conformity to outward Western beauty standards? With all due respect, what are you talking about? I even saw some people saying that it's not a double standard because the women appear largely to be alternative while the men looked basic. But if you've ever hung around alternative men, you know this is what they genuinely look like. Again, she posted the male version first. People did not cry Eurocentric beauty standards when it came to the male video. The only reason she made a female version was because people asked for one, specifically sapphic women. And when the female version came out, a lot of queer women loved it because, oh my god, queer women know that sometimes women can be awful too. Not in any deep philosophical way, just in a way that sometimes exes can suck regardless of gender. It's so weird how the audience's tone completely shifted when she was making fun of men versus women. When she drew conventionally unattractive men, it was just harmless fun of letting people who dated horrible men cope with their romantic trauma. But when she drew conventionally unattractive women, suddenly she was a body-shaming, basic, internalized misogynist. This is gonna be like entirely anecdotal, but from what I've noticed, it seems like a lot of criticism comes from mostly straight women. In fact, I think I've noticed that a lot of people involved in the surface level online gender war is straight and or frustratingly single. Not every single straight or lonely person, obviously, but I mean virtually almost everyone engaging this way happens to be straight and single. Probably because when you mostly interact with the other gender through romantic or sexual frustration, every gender-related discussion revolves around your personal notable interactions over broader social structures. A light niche example is how hobbies are sometimes criticized from the other gender. There are a lot of men who make fun of stereotypical feminine interests that are usually looks-based, while a lot of women make fun of stereotypical masculine interests that are usually interaction-based. I think a lot of women know that they don't wear makeup, skimpy outfits, or get their nails done for men, obviously. They typically do it for themselves or other women. Sometimes I've seen men ask, if women do their stereotypical beauty hobby for themselves like fashion or makeup, then why do they ask their male partners that they look nice, as like a gotcha moment for women, because they believe that women do those things for male approval. But you know when men do their stereotypical interactive hobby like something competitive or show-off based, and they go up to their female partner and ask if they saw you or if they thought it was cool, expecting a compliment or at least a well done. Men obviously don't play sports, drag race, or lift weights to impress or get other women, but it's just nice to know that your partner appreciates the work you put into something that you like doing. Which is why I get confused to see some women post videos about getting annoyed at men for things like driving loud cars, because no woman cares about loud cars. But from what I've seen, car guys know that. They know that so well that they treat a lot of women who do care about loud cars like shit. I'm pretty sure that men have their hobbies for themselves just like women do. Sometimes people just like having loud cars. Some people just like to wear makeup. And sometimes they just don't care about what others have to criticize about it. My personal way of figuring out whether something is genuinely problematic or if I'm holding a double standard is to ask myself, if someone of a different gender, sexuality, race, or religion did the same thing, would I still be bothered by it? If the answer is no, then I try to pause and reflect on why that particular identity makes me uncomfortable. A kind of relevant example is that whenever I talk about men specifically, I will sometimes get comments like, "I'm sorry for being a man." And for some reason, those comments always bothered me. And I was thinking in my head, like, is it just because I hate men and I hate when they talk or something? But then I realized if all the times I've complained about women, a woman would comment, "I'm sorry for being a woman," I feel like she would have missed the point of whatever I'm talking about, because being a binary gendered person does not make you do or say bad things. You don't need to apologize for something that you can't control, because your gender doesn't determine what kind of person you are. I know the men who commented this weren't trying to be like malicious or anything. I know that they're trying to be thoughtful and sympathetic, but I just find that "I'm sorry for identifying with whatever gender you're complaining about" to be weird and unnecessary. They're not the weirdest comments I get, because sometimes I also get comments that get upset about the fact that I'm not a man hater. Like when I was complaining about unethical gooners, someone brought up the fact that I want men like to be in this current plane of existence as an insult. Even though I know for a fact that unethical female gooners, including lesbians, read a lot of toxic yaoi. If men aren't around, which gender are you gonna psychologically and physically torture in your gay gooner manga? Because I know these types of women do not read yuri because they think it's boring. That kind of hypocrisy that I see from fake progressives also comes up when I see people just attack people for seemingly no reason. I think a good example is the less than recent situation with the wizard Liz. I don't necessarily believe that she's a man hater like a lot of people do, but I've always thought that her idea of feminism seemed very performative. From what I understand, the wizard Liz built her brand around a general that girl lifestyle aesthetic mixed with what I believe to be performative empowerment content. Her content always read as, "You want to be confident like me, you want to be pretty like me, you want to be rich like me, you want to be happy like me." And while manifestation like that is fine, there was just something about her approach that feels more manufactured or like it's pandering to an audience rather than coming from genuine conviction. And I know that might sound weird because I like Drew Afualo's content, but the main difference for me is that one approach is more grounded in calling out specific harmful behaviors, while the other sells you a version of yourself based on vague grievances. Drew built her platform around calling out genuinely problematic behavior in a comedic way, like making fun of men who create misogynistic content or harass women online. She just feels more authentic to me. point because she goes into depth with which women she supports while holding other people accountable for documented online behavior. She clearly loves the good men in her life and respects men online who don't hate women. But on the other hand, the Wizard Liz makes more broad statements about men being terrible and unimportant without providing real examples and relies on her audience to fill in the blanks with their own experiences instead. I don't dislike her as a person, I'm sure she's wonderful, but I'm personally not a fan of her approach to female empowerment that is heavily rooted in privilege. But even with that very biased opinion, I think both the fans and haters are being way too hard on the Wizard Liz for the recent drama that she's been having. If you care and don't know, over the past year, Liz got engaged and became pregnant within a year of meeting Landon. About probably a month ago, while Liz was in London just after being 4 months pregnant, and apparently still in some honeymoon-like loving phase, Liz had learned that he allegedly used a secret Snapchat account to message other women who was a longtime fan of hers, and that woman ended up showing the messages to Liz's friend. After that, Liz called him out, detailing how just days earlier he was super affectionate and loving, only to allegedly betray her right after. Liz announced she broke off the engagement and that she'd donate her ring funds that was like 100k, but I don't think she was allowed to sell the ring for whatever reason. But she still ended up donating like 40,000 pounds of her own money to Single Mothers Charity. Another woman, Abby, who's one of Landon's exes, posted a TikTok describing similar toxic behaviors she experienced and claiming that she tried to warn Liz about his behavior. But Liz then posted on her story that she seemed like she was at the very least a bit skeptical about Abby's claims, stating that she had no prior knowledge of Abby's messages or that she couldn't verify the timeline exactly. There's been a lot of speculation whether this whole drama thing is for publicity, but if this situation is her actual reality, I truly don't think the blame should be falling so heavily onto Liz. If you've ever seen clips of her and Landon, he appeared to shower her with intense affection and extravagant gifts like million-dollar purchases and over-the-top displays of devotion. If you're good at catching red flags, you might have noticed that this level of intensity seemed performative and potentially manipulative, but love bombing is specifically designed to be disarming and overwhelming. In her case, someone whose entire brand was about being cautious with men and maintaining independence got completely overwhelmed by what seemed like the perfect love story. It is not her fault she fell for a man who lied. It is not her fault for being a victim. Beyond the question of whether this was manipulation or love bombing, it's strangely ironic how her own fans aren't giving her any slack at all. I don't know if that's a reflection of what she puts out, but her fans most likely claim themselves to be girls. Yet I don't think girls would put this much blame on a pregnant woman who just got cheated on. There's something deeply upsetting about watching people who supposedly support women's empowerment become victim blamers when a woman actually becomes a victim. I will admit that I was a bit surprised that she seemed very hostile to Abby in her Instagram stories by doubting everything Abby said, but I also don't expect someone who's potentially being manipulated to react perfectly to information that shatters their perception of reality. Abby was very courageous for speaking out, and I don't think she deserved to be dismissed like that, but to be completely fair, Liz was having a really bad time. Remember that she was 4 months pregnant, dealing with betrayal from her supposed husband/fiance. You are already incredibly emotional when you're pregnant, and the mental trauma of discovering the person you trusted most has been lying and cheating is already devastating under normal circumstances. But now imagine trying to process that level of betrayal while your body is flooded with pregnancy hormones. That makes everything feel much more intense. So I can probably imagine that she's been trying to manage her stress and emotional responses because that stress directly affects her unborn child. Fetuses can feel when their mothers are under extreme stress, so she's probably torn between wanting to process her anger and pain while also trying to stay calm as possible for her future baby's health, which is terribly hard to do when you're being manipulated by someone who's supposed to be your partner and support system. I know that doesn't make how she reacted towards Abby acceptable, but it just frustrates me how much people are deciding between putting the blame on Abby or putting the blame on Liz. Hey, if you want to blame someone, blame Landon. Literally the person who cheated, manipulated both women, and created this entire situation. Instead of directing anger at two women dealing with the fallout of his actions, focus on the fact that he's the common denominator. You can hold Liz accountable for how she treated Abby while still recognizing that she's also a victim. Supporting women doesn't mean they have to be the perfect victims who react exactly how we think they should, because being an actual girl's girl means supporting girls through messy, complicated situations where they might not always make the best choices. Since the Wizard Liz has been popping up as a topic for internet drama this last month, I've seen her longtime haters come out calling her the female Andrew Tate. But I'm gonna tell you right now, there is not a single extreme femcel popular enough to be on the same level as Andrew Tate. Even the most extreme example that I can think of is probably Shazimei. I'm a little unfamiliar with Shara since I think I've only come across her content like once, but considering that she collabed with the misogynistic grifter Russell Hartley, I don't trust a word she says. But still, Shazimei is that American live streamer and dating coach with that sprinkle sprinkle catchphrase. She advises women, typically those over 25, to pursue wealthy partners and avoid dusties, which means men without money. Her content is super annoying and vain to me, but none of it is based on systematic hatred, violence, or discrimination against all men. Andrew Tate has advocated for essay victim blaming, inciting violence against women, male dominance, control over women, while his tone was always aggressive or dehumanizing. While creators like Shazimei advocated for self-worth, independence, financial empowerment, while her tone was typically sarcastic and at worst it was a bit harsh, but never violent. The most harm they push is being emotionally blunt or dismissive. That doesn't make their content good because being not like Andrew Tate is an extremely low standard for opinionated content. But whenever I hear comparisons like that, it just makes me feel suspicious if they're actually unaware of the difference between venting and promoting violence, or if they fear female empowerment. Both Shazimei and the Wizard Liz are constantly compared to incel idols because people want to be like, see, both sides are bad. Why is it that female creators get so quickly labeled as extreme for advocating basic self-worth and boundaries, while male creators have to cross much more serious lines before facing scrutiny? The bar for what constitutes female extremism seems suspiciously low compared to their male creators. If the comparison being made was both femcel and incel creators are cringe, oh, we can talk about that all day, because what the does dark feminine energy even mean? But if we're talking about actual harm, one is objectively worse than the other. Remember, when it comes to comparing people to the convicted sex trafficker, the bar should probably be set at an actual advocacy for violence and exploitation, not just having strong opinions that you personally find annoying. I think that's how a lot of double standards just become virtue signaling too. I know that a lot of people misuse that phrase, especially against people who are genuinely for societal progression, so it's kind of lost all meaning, kind of like the word woke. But whenever I see double standards in social or political discourse, it's mostly just people getting upset about something that they supposedly believe in, but it doesn't seem like they actually fully understand what they support. I'm not saying that these people are malicious or evil or anything, but virtue signaling also exists on a spectrum, as everything else. On one end, there are people who genuinely believe in progress, but still exhibit performative patterns because of societal pressure, whether by their peers or audience if they're creators. On the other end, there are people who use progressive sounding language purely for social capital without actually committing to the principles or values behind them. A perfect example of this is when I saw this video that was like, expecting a man to provide for you, but you're a misogynist. Boo! Expecting a man to provide for you, but you're misandrist. Yay! I would like to think that I don't have to explain how that is the stupidest mindset to have ever, right? Cheating on your partner, but you're a garbage human being. Boo. Cheating on your partner, but it's a trauma response. Yay! Even if you use different buzzwords, it's still the same result. But it just changes the justification for why that expectation exists. You can try all you want to girl bossify traditional gender roles, but it still pushes the idea that a man's role is only a provider because of his gender. If the video was like expecting a man to provide for you because you think that's the man's job, boo! Expecting a man to provide for you because that's what you seek in your relationship and you're normal around men who don't want that, yay! Then I wouldn't have cared. Patriarchal frameworks say that certain roles are mandatory based on gender. Personal choice says, I know what I want in my relationship, but I won't shame people who want something different. One reinforces systemic gender roles, the other treats financial dynamics as individual relationship negotiations between equals. Maybe I've girl bossed a little too close to the sun, but I've noticed that a lot within femcel spaces that it seems like they're trying to make relying on a man a very empowering thing. Women cook and clean and birth babies not because she's a victim of the patriarchy, but because the perfect man brought out her feminine energy. Oh my god, I feel like a dog in a kennel watching their owner's house get robbed. All these men expect to get treated like princesses. What's wrong with men wanting to be treated like princesses? I might be a little biased because I call all the men around me princesses, but unless your idea of acting like a princess is acting like a sex trafficking victim, I fear I don't understand the uproar about men wanting their partners to treat them well, especially if you think it's fine for women to get treated like kings. My man brought out the feminine energy after being in my masculine era. Well, the masculine era they're referencing is just being lonely. Yeah, you were single and you didn't like being single, and now you have a nice partner that you can go to when you need help for something. Being single and self-reliant isn't masculine energy, it's just being alone and handling things yourself because you have to. It's so stupid that a normal relationship dynamic are being reinterpreted through a framework that makes interpersonal dependence sound like a return to your true feminine nature as a woman. I know that it might be because of how vague they say it as well. Maybe I'm not picturing what they're trying to paint for me, but I grew up around the religious and not so religious idea that men providing for women is a wonderful thing. You get to relax and be with your family and home while your husband has to go do the rough, hard labor of a white-collar job. There's no such thing as 50-50 because when you inevitably want a family because you're expected to have a family, it won't ever be be equal because you're more connected with your children as a mother, so he has to provide for you. There's no other equal choice. I love when people frame biological essentialism as equal rights. The problem is not that women autonomously want and choose the right to cook, clean, or have children, but that they feel like they have no other option and then tell other women that it's the best option. If you want to be a stay-at-home parent because you genuinely love nurturing and homemaking regardless of gender, that's a legitimate and autonomous choice. But if your reasoning is, I'm a woman, therefore that is my biological purpose, you are still operating within a patriarchal logic, even if you're doing it willingly. If you were a man, would you still want to cook, clean, and have babies while your wife provides for you, or would you feel like you now have to do the other role of providing? It's literally the same whenever I see those women are the superior sex misandrous feminists online, and I know that most of them are joking. Like, I don't give a when they're joking, but I care when they give advice and express opinions that are obviously made to be transphobic specifically. Not all radical feminists, but it's always a radical feminist. Men are just biologically programmed to be violent, sex-crazed losers, so that's why women will never be men. Well, like half of their audience are normal-ass men who like to read or some shit. I got this message from probably a secret admirer saying that they didn't appreciate my stance on trans women because they felt like I was speaking on behalf of all women. Despite me being suspicious that this message was sent by a cis woman, I don't view women as a monolith. I know that many women, sometimes even including trans women themselves, will never accept trans women as just women. I don't think it always comes from malice, since I think most of it stems from fear and confusion or a sense of losing language for something that felt like theirs. But you can also address those feelings without targeting the trans community as a whole. If you get hurt because you feel like I'm speaking on behalf of all women, but then you still view me as a cis one and still resort to calling me misogynistic insults, it almost seems like you only pretend to protect women so you can use it as a weapon against queer people. Almost, you know, I don't want to assume anything. I've been getting so many comments recently saying that they're disappointed in me for denying my womanhood. Why can't I just accept the fact that I'm a woman and be proud of it? But I've never said that you weren't allowed to call me a woman. In fact, I wholeheartedly welcome it. But unfortunately, just because I allow everyone else to use whatever labels or pronouns they'd like for me, doesn't make me confused or misogynist. You can call me a cis woman because that's how you view me and that's what you feel most comfortable referring to me as. Others call me a trans woman, a feminine man, an intersex, non-binary, or gender fluid person, and even headcanon neo-pronouns for me, because that's how they view me and that's what they feel most comfortable referring to me as. I feel quite literally nothing, apathetic you could even say, about which gender people view me as. If you believe your bones, chromosomes, genitalia, or government document determine your entire identity, personality, and social role, great, all the power to you. But those things don't define most people, because it quite literally is the exact framework that the patriarchy uses to justify sexism. Both sexism and transphobia require believing that biological characteristics create fundamental, unchangeable differences between people. You can be a radical feminist without being a transphobe. If your feminism relies on hating other groups, you are still bigoted. I am not trying to say that being a radical feminist is a bad thing, because it's still a great branch of feminism. Like when it challenges the idea that gender roles are natural, critiques how patriarchy operates through seemingly neutral institutions, and refuses to accept that women's oppression is just an unfortunate side effect of otherwise fair systems. Those are all fantastic, but the issue I find is when those radical feminists want to defend gendered categories instead of dismantling them. The way I view TERFs is the same to how I view white feminists in this regard, because they want liberation for their specific groups while maintaining the hierarchical thinking that creates oppression in the first place. I know that comparison might anger some people because non-white people are also transphobic, but both groups still claim to protect women while reinforcing the same systems that harm them. Cis women aren't a monolith, just like how trans people aren't a monolith. My feminism will always be intersectional, which includes trans people, because they also live in a sexist, patriarchal society that doesn't view them as people. You can bark all the dogma you've heard on Fox News, but the same patriarchal social system that tells cis women they're too masculine for having hair on their face also leads to telling trans women they're not real women because they have hair on their face. The same system that restricts women's bodily autonomy also polices trans people's access to healthcare and self-determination. The same system that makes people want female athletes to take their clothes off while they play also police which women can play. If you want to care about women, then you should care about the other groups that define those women too, which includes the disabled, the mentally ill, the non-white, and the LGBT with the T. And if you care about the women in those groups, your empathy should expand to other people in those groups too, which also happen to include men. Sexism that harms men will always come back around to harm the people you claim to care about, just like sexism that harms women will always come back around to harm the people you claim to care about. Selective feminism will always inevitably fail. The same stereotypes that make people dismiss male survivors because they think men always want sex stem from the same stereotypes that make people dismiss female survivors because they think that women who dress or act a certain way are asking for it. The same gender roles that tell men that they have to be leading providers also tell women they must be submissive caregivers. We all stare down this giant monster, but some people blame the feet for stepping on people while others blame the hands for destroying homes, when we should be blaming the entire thing for doing these things in the first place. But I don't know, that's just me. Laters.